Yo, what's up guys, and welcome to a brand new video. My name is Soundworld, and today I'm going to teach you guys how to process your pianos, very similar to Michael Calfan and Avicii. Now, I already made this video in Spanish, and you can see pretty much the processing I was doing in it. However, I wanted to remake this video so I can explain to you guys the theory behind every little thing we're doing, and hopefully it helps you guys out in the end. Now, just a quick note, I do make Spanish videos now and then just because I feel like there's not many high quality tutorials out there where people that are making tutorials actually know what the hell they're talking about. A lot of times I watch it and I'm like, okay, so they're like, turn this knob, and that's it. So I like to make videos now and then to help them out as well. Now, personally, I never make a tutorial on something unless I know what I'm talking about or it works for me to a certain extent. I know there's a couple of videos I have of music theory where I even tell you guys that it's my way of doing it, so it's not the way that it's taught in school, but it works for me. Okay, so let's get started with this tutorial. So we're gonna have a MIDI and it's gonna sound like this. Okay, so getting pianos to sound full and loud is pretty much the point of this tutorial. Now, when people record pianos, like Native Instruments decides, we're gonna record a piano and we're gonna use the Alicia Keys piano or whatever, because that's the one I'm using. Let's record it. Now, when they record a piano, they're not going in saying we're going to record it and just make it for dance producers, you know, EDM producers. They're going in recording, trying to make it available to the point where anyone can use it. And a lot of genres like classical music, ambient stuff, likes dynamics. They love dynamics on their pianos because their style of music doesn't really require the music to be as loud or stay at the same RMS level the whole way through. Now, with house music, it's different. With dance music, the first thing we want is we want the piano to stay at a consistent level. What this means is we don't want the piano going from 3 dBs, and let's just say, you know, this is going to be the measurement of the volume from 3 dBs and then all the way down to -2 and then up to 0, then, you know, all over the place. No, we want a piano that's going to stay pretty much at a volume the whole way through, especially on drops, because our music is so compressed. And if you guys know anything about mixing and mastering, you know that if something is changing volumes drastically in a mix where it's peaking and then it's going down and then it's doing all crazy sorts of shit, you know it's gonna fuck up with your mix if you don't tame it. So that's one of the reasons why we want a consistent piano. Also, consistent pianos that are playing loud the whole time are gonna sound stronger than pianos that are changing volumes the whole time. And you can see this with singers. When people sing, they always talk, you know, you always see them in the studio singing and they always talk about, oh, I have my favorite microphone and my favorite compressor. Now, the compressor, what it does is it squishes dynamics. So if I was a singer and I were to sing like, ooh, baby, you know, I'm going to have my levels of voice are going to go all over the place. Obviously, there's going to be low parts and high parts depending on the frequencies and what scale I'm playing and what note I'm hitting. So we want the volume of our voice to be consistent somewhat all the way through as well. So a lot of times if you hear pop songs, you hear the girl's voice or the guy's voice and it sounds strong every time they're singing. And the reason for that is just compression, and that's what we want out of the piano in dance music. So the first thing we're going to do is we are going to apply an EQ, and this is going to be pretty much just to brighten up or make the piano dull, depending on what kind of feeling you're going with. Now, with the Alicia Keys piano right now, to me it sounds very, very, very dull. It doesn't sound as bright as I would like it to be, and dance music tends to be very bright. So if we play it, you can see a lot. There's really not that much high frequency, but we do have a lot of mid, low, and mid. So what we're going to do is we are going to add a boost here. And what this is going to do is it's pretty much just going to add brightness to the piano. So as you guys can see, it just adds a hint of brightness because there's not that much frequency up here. When we do this, it doesn't really add any dirt to it unless there was already a lot and then we just over boosted it. Now we also want to do it to a certain extent where it's not that noticeable that you boosted the shit out of the top end of the piano. So be careful with it if you're using a different type of piano that does have some brightness up there. The next thing is we want these MIDI notes to pretty much be playing at max velocity. So necessarily all you're going to do is do this and you're going to pull them up all the way. Now, velocity is very important when it comes to these type of programs, like when you use Contact and stuff, because it lets the the program know how you want the sound to come out, so, you know. And when people make these programs, they have, you know, a piano player just doesn't go on there and play every fucking note really hard once and then that's it, that's the end of it. No, a piano player is going to go and play every note, and they're going to say, okay, at this note, this is me playing at 100% velocity, this is me playing at 75, this is me playing at 50, this is me playing at 25. So yeah, the velocity is very important, because if I wanted this to sound more mellow, then all I have to do is lower velocity down. And this is the kind of stuff that classical music players want. People are using these programs to make classical music. Very mellow sounding pianos. But what we want is pretty much just a wall of piano hitting you right in the center. So, boom. Next thing we're going to do is just take a little bit of dirt away. So, from that, the next thing is just adding a high pass, just to get rid of the lows. Now, if you were to use this for a drop, then you would want to get rid of the lows. If it's just for the break and there's nothing else that playing down there like a sub or a respace, then you can leave it. Alright guys, now the next thing we are going to do is, since I've explained before that, you know, the piano itself is recorded where we want max, obviously we want max dynamics. So we're going to get a little bit rid of the dynamics just to control the piano a bit more. This is going to allow us just to, you know, kind of glue it. And we're going to use the glue compressor for this video. You can use any compressor, but the glue one just has certain characteristics that make it better for like layering stuff. I thought I'd use that for here. Alright guys, now the next thing we're going to do is going to be pretty much just... Alright guys, now the next thing we're going to do is just compress this piano, because as I've explained. Alright guys, now the next thing we're going to do is just compress the piano, because I've explained they recorded with dynamics in mind. So we just want to get rid of those dynamics just a tiny bit. Now, when you compress something, anything behind it, like effects wise, like the EQ and all that, is going to make the EQ sound more apparent. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to decide whether the EQ or compressor should come first. Always think, okay, I'm going to compress this. There's a reverb behind it. Do I want that reverb to pop out more? Then if you say yes, then put the compressor in front of it. If you say no, then put the reverb in front of the compressor. This is called, I think it's called gain staging. And you know, necessarily, you know, the chain is going to be really important, how you chain things, because then if I have a reverb and then I add saturation after the reverb, then obviously the reverb is going to get saturated as well. So keep that in mind as we go along with this video. Now, pretty much here, we just did a compression and we have this EQ8. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is add saturation. Now, saturation is adding, let's just say it's getting an EQ, boosting at certain frequencies that are harmonic to whatever you have. That's pretty much what saturation is. It's adding harmonics, you know, increasing levels through harmonics. So when we increase the drive, we're pretty much just adding a lot more volume, and what you're gonna get is pretty much just a more kind of harder type of sound, which you guys will see right now. Now, if you overdo saturation, you're going to start getting distortion, because distortion is pretty much just saturation done at an excessive level. So that's not what we want. What we want is just, you know, some saturation to kind of make it sound a little bit brighter, a little bit nicer, more fuller, and that's what we're going to achieve with that. Now, the next thing is we're going to apply a reverb, and we're just going to go into the reverb default that we have. Just take out the diffusion networks here, maybe leave the low one, and kind of cut out this part here. The way I see the diffusion network, though, and don't quote me on this because I haven't really read the Ableton manual, but the way I see it is this is just an EQ for the pretty much the reverb coming out of the you know, of the plugin, whatever you're using. So the reverb, I didn't want to say reverb twice. So pretty much whatever's coming out of the reverb is going to get EQ'd by this, and necessarily we don't want any lows, and that's pretty much what we're going to get. We're going to increase the send to A, so then we're going to have the piano going in here, and then we're going to get the reverb, make sure it's at 100% as well. So there we have the reverb. Now, one of the ways I've used reverb as well is I also use it as a layering tool. And this is just my style of producing. Whenever I have a sound like a bass or something and I want to make that shit pop out, sound a little bit harder, sound like it's taking up a lot of space, one of the things I like to do is put a low decay time, decrease the size, and you can see it's gonna add this sort of like kind of like mirror of the sound, but kind of EQ'd out. Like someone got like a EQ and like took out all the mids and left the highs in there. So I always feel like this adds sort of like that extra icing on it, in my opinion. But this is just mine. You don't have to do it. But this is what I usually do, and I add it to a lot of things, and it just a lot of sounds get, let's just say, you can get really unique sounds doing this, and then fucking around with the size and everything. So I'll leave it at that, so I don't want to give much away from it. So once you have this, pretty much, you know, I think we're gonna be done here. Now, just a few notes, guys. If you were to use this in a drop, then obviously we would want to place our piano somewhere. Necessarily in you know, I'm gonna say necessarily like 5 times in this video, but pretty much we are gonna. If we were to put this in a drop, what we want is the kick and the bass to be in the center. That's always going to be the case. I've never heard of a kick that was wide and shit. And you know, I've always gotten into disputes with people about it, but I'm like, there's no reason for your kick to be fucking wide. So a kick necessarily is never going to be wide. So usually I tend to put the kick and the bass in the middle, and then I tend to put the chords wide. And if there's a lead playing while the piano and kick and bass are playing, I tend to put the kick a little bit more, the lead a little bit more mono-ish, just because I know that I can EQ a lot of that mid and lows out of it and still have a nice sounding lead, because you're going to have the pianos playing and reinforcing it on the sides. So necessarily would get the S1 and then just move it wide. So pretty much we went from having this very, you know, nice sounding piano to pretty much the piano that a lot of people want for dance music, which you can find in Nexus, because they do all this for you in Nexus, and you can play it out of the box. But if you want to do it yourself, this is the way. You get a dance piano. Now, in order to get the micro Calfan sound, the piano is layered with other plucks from a synth, which, you know, you guys could probably find. So just get crazy with it. Once you have the piano, start layering stuff like plucks and all this, voices, and see what you can come up with. But this is mainly how I always process pianos. It sounds great. And this is my way of doing it. You don't have to go crazy with the brightness, by the way. You can kind of put it down more if you feel like you don't want it that bright, but it's totally up to you guys. As always, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys next time. Take